Today I'm going to go over an overview of our poetry unit plan. The rationale for this unit is that students will discover and learn about poetry. Through many different lessons, the students will learn about different types of poetry using various sources. The students will learn about similes, metaphors, haikus, concrete poems, acrostic poems, and biopoems. The various resources will include students using their electronic devices, YouTube videos, graphic organizers, worksheets, and slideshows. Dependent on each lesson, the resources and activities will vary. The unit plan consists of 6 lessons. The first day is for students to do their own research on the poetry topics they are given. The objective is for students to work together in small groups. Students will use technology to research their given aspect of poetry, including biopoems, acrostic, similes and metaphors, haiku, and concrete. Each student will need to provide their own unique fact found as a group, and they will need to find an example of their respective aspects. The vocabulary to be covered on this day is poem. The vocabulary to be covered for this day is poem, nursery rhymes, rhyming, rhythm, and stanza. The standard for this lesson is for students to conduct short research projects that build knowledge through investigation of different aspects of a topic. Excuse me. Day 2 is for identifying similes and metaphors. The objective for this lesson is for students. After reading Owl Moon by Jane Olin, students will determine the literal and non-literal meaning of a simile or metaphor from the story with no more than one error. Their activity will be to fill out a graphic organizer using one of the similes or metaphors that they found. The vocabulary that will be covered on this day will be simile, metaphor, literal, non-literal, and figurative language. The standard for day 2 is for students to use knowledge of this language and its conventions when writing, speaking, reading, or listening, and to choose words and phrases to convey ideas precisely, choose punctuation for that effect, and differentiate between contexts that call for formal English and situations where informal discourse is appropriate. Day 3 is for covering and creating a haiku poem. Students will be reading and clapping to the symbols of a haiku poem with the teacher. The objective is for students, given the paper, students will be able to write a haiku poem following the correct guidelines for a haiku, while including imagery and a simile or metaphor within the poem. After creating a poem, students will be able to identify the main theme and a supporting detail in another student's poem. And the vocabulary to be covered during this lesson will be haiku, syllable, imagery, nature, and stanza, again, will be covered. The standard for this lesson on this day is for students to determine a theme of a story, drama, or poem from details in the text, summarize the text. Then on day 4, the 4th lesson plan is for students to cover and create a biography poem. The objective is that students will write their own organized biopoems using a worksheet with descriptive details and or words. Then present it to the class, speaking clearly and at an understandable pace. And the vocabulary for this day will be personification, biography, relationship, residence, and accomplishments. The standard for this lesson is for students to report on a topic or text, tell a story, or recount an experience in an organized manner, using appropriate facts and relevant descriptive details to support main ideas or themes. Speak clearly at an understandable pace. On day 5, the lesson is for covering and creating acrostic poems. The objective for this lesson is that in pairs, the students will create, revise, and edit an acrostic poem for using a poetry outline worksheet. The vocabulary to be covered on this day would be acrostic poetry, peer revising, lines, foot, and self-evaluation. And the standard for this lesson is that students will, with guidance and support from peers and adults, develop and strengthen writing as needed by planning, revising, and editing. And on the last day of the unit plan is the last lesson on concrete poems. The objective of this lesson is, given an example, students will produce a clear and coherent concrete poem with one example of alliteration, onomatopoeia, and are appropriate to the task, purpose, and audience. The vocabulary for this day is concrete poem, alliteration, onomatopoeia, consonant, and free verse. The standard for this lesson is to produce clear and coherent writing in which the development and organization are appropriate to task, purpose, and audience. These are the 6 lessons that will be covered by the poetry unit plan for the 4th grade.